Any more questions, comments, panel?
I just want to say something about...
Panel? I didn't know your name was Panel. Wait a minute. What about, you're sat there in the middle.
Well, first of all, I'll just return to the question that was put quite a long time ago. One of the things is that looking at the history, there isn't really a book about the links of Manchester, Greater Manchester, Lancashire cotton and slavery. I mean, that was one of the things that sparked off the project amongst the Greater Manchester museums, is that there wasn't really, a text to refer to. Doing history, unfortunately, is a bit of a slow process, and especially among museums, it works even slower, simply because the nature of the way we do history in museums is with objects, and they're a lot harder and more difficult to work with because they don't come with words attached. But reading across the collections that we have in this museum, and looking at the local history of Bolton, Greater Manchester, the obvious link between the hinterland and slavery in the Americas is simply cotton. And when the cotton boom really took hold in Greater Manchester and Lancashire, that was after the end of the British Act against the slave trade in 1807. And it was also after slavery in the British Empire in 1834. The boom in cotton really takes place in the early 1800s, from about the 1820s onwards. And so, as you said, look to the economy, look to the economics of it. What is it? Well, it's, still all these mills which are buying the slave cotton. And that's the big link. As the cotton mills pop up all over Lancashire, so do the slave plantations in the southern US, and they're being populated not through the trade anymore, but by the natural development of slaves, biological within the country. But and if you do want to look at the figures, there is massive economic growth in the south that runs parallel to the cotton industry here. So that's the big link. And, that's what that mule is all about, really, in a lot of ways. It's about industrialisation and the increased capacity. And, when you increase your capacity to spin cotton, you need more supplies of raw cotton. And that's the link, and it's as simple as that, I think. And it's quite an important thing to remember. And it happened after all the acts that were passed that, you're talking about everyone celebrating.
We have about 10 minutes to go. So again, I invite anybody in the audience to make a comment, if they've got a comment or a question. Sir?
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up what Dan said, which was just to say about the Revealing Histories project that for the museums involved, it wasn't about celebration. The 2007 anniversary was something that was quite handy as a way of hanging things off, but it wasn't really about that anniversary or trying to celebrate somehow, a great achievement made by local people or congratulating Britain about something that it managed to do. It was really a sort of handy milestone that came along at a time when museums in the area wanted to look at the social history of particularly cotton industry, because it's so important. To places like Bolton are built on the back of it. And what we wanted to do was, although there's a very traditional interpretation of things like the mule as an invention and building the mills and all the people who worked in the mills, we wanted to provide a broader context for that, and wanted to explain that machine and its later successive developments are about being part of a global economy. And so the Revealing Histories project was to try and talk about that global economy, that broader context, and to get people to think about those things and those objects and collections, put them into that kind of context. So, at the risk of sounding slightly defensive on behalf of the museum.
Both the museums and galleries together is connecting our history. And that is where we sit. We connect. We sit in this room because we connect as human beings, not because it's a handy date on the calendar. We will remember our histories. by the way we interact in shops, in streets, in relationships. We would defy the history of slavery by those very interactions. You know? When we live next door to each other in a global sense, in a peaceful and respectful sense, we defy the traders of slavery. That's how we move forward. But if we don't acknowledge what has gone before and we don't look behind to see what's gone before, then we wipe it away. Who was going for the microphone? Sir? All right.
Just going back to what you said, I think that's if you look at it and say, what's the one thing I'll take away from all that's happened today? I think it's basically talking about, as Peter said, the legacy of racism and what we do about it. So, I mean, as you said, relationship, interaction. If we go out of here and say we're not going to tolerate racism in any form, anywhere we see it being practiced, we will speak out against it. And then slowly and surely we're moving forward.
I do think as well, it's important to say though, and this is controversial, it's not just racism, it's racism and prejudice. Because, to be fair, some of the slave trade that exists today is one race to one race. You understand what I'm saying? It's not necessarily a white-black trade. So it's prejudice and racism. It's seeing someone else as inferior. And it starts in bullying in schools and the way forward. And for me, it's mutual respect for the people that moves us forward together. So, on behalf of the gallery, and Revealing Histories, and Connecting Our Histories, thank you for your time, thank you for the afternoon, thank you for the performance.
Thank you very much. It's a fantastic book. I do wish it could circulate a little more widely.
I thought it was great when you said pickup economics.
Yeah, I read a lot of...
I'm only going to I don't know when certain schools can
I'm visiting a professor, a guy called Genovese, who wrote a book called Roll, Jordan, Roll. Yeah. Which is another kind of description of I was quite interested in a discussion about the rebellion and the different forms of rebellion and kind of sabotage and silent rebellion and all sorts of different ways of it.